everyone. Welcome to the Safe House, brought to you by the SafeHouse Initiative. I'm Jeff Edwards, co-chair of the SafeHouse Initiative, and your host for today's podcast. To truly understand any subject, you have to take a step back and really start to understand the basics. And today we're extremely fortunate to investigate an area of incident response. Basically, take a look at the anatomy of an incident response is how we're thinking about it. During the next two episodes, Eder Ribeiro, Director of Incident Response for TransUnion, will help us dissect and understand incident response from the inside out. Eder, welcome to the Safe House.
Thank you, Jeff. Thrilled to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, with your vast knowledge, so if we're talking about anatomy, maybe I should call you doctor. But,
don't let it go to my head too fast, but I will tell my wife now that someone referred to me as doctor.
All right. Maybe I'll just call you a pathologist. And I guess that'd be a dead subject. No, I'm sorry. So anyway, hey, Eder, so as Director of Global Incident Response, you didn't just wake up one day and assume that role. Why don't you tell and get acquainted with our audience, share with you a bit about your background and kind of your adventure to get to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I certainly did not wake up one day and was where I am today. And as a matter of fact, it was quite the windy road, especially since incident response, and we're talking digital here, is a new thing as far as career paths, I think, are concerned, right? There wasn't as much of this kind of thing going on 15 years ago or 20 years ago, and certainly there were no real directors of IR 30 years ago. So it's not like being a mechanic or a consultant or a lawyer or something that traces back hundreds of years. It's not everyone finds their calling immediately either, right? So it's an interesting road. I grew up, I was born and mostly raised in Brazil. And then due to family circumstances, we moved from Southeast Brazil to here in Rhode Island, where I am now, so Northeast US. Arrived on the first day of snow, so that was a shock for a tropical kid first time here to also see snow at the same time. So we lived here in Rhode Island since, and so it's been a bit over 20 something years now, and so I went to school, finished up school here, did undergrad here. And I love fixing things. I always loved fixing things and fixing problems. And I wasn't sure where to take some of those passions, as everywhere you go, there are problems to fix. So it just really depends on the type of problem you like fixing, right? The type of puzzle you like putting together. Yeah. And at the time, I was a very high energy young man. And so I had also enlisted in the Rhode Island Army National Guard at 17. So I started as an infantry guy. And so upon graduating high school, my first and only focus was to let me go through basic training and infantry school and all of that down in Fort Benning, Georgia, before I really figure out for sure what my next steps are going to be. And that was wise, I think, when I look back at it, as it was formative, and it changes a lot of who you are and what you're, what you want to do in life. So when I came back from that, I realized I still wanted to fix things. I just wasn't sure what the things were. So I picked, as any high energy young man, I made decisions very quickly. So I picked the first thing that I could think of that I love doing, that I thought, hey, this is going to be what I do. So I went to a local school called the New England Institute of Technology, or NEIT at first. And my first bout of school was an advanced automotive and high performance degree. So I was installing turbos and taking transmissions and engines apart and essentially doing mechanic work. And from there, I completed a bachelor's in business management, and I was working in different capacities. And I always had a knack for computers. In high school, I used to do computer courses. I used to take them apart, put them back together. This is, Windows 98 and XP type of days. used to do software troubleshooting and all this other stuff. So I had these different interests that were kind of all over the place. I always stayed up with technology. I was always curious about technology and staying up to date with the newest trends and what was going on. I was always the kid that fixed all the computers for the family and things of that sort. So it was always there kind of in the background, right, as I navigated through things. And circa 2011, the orders came down for combat deployment. And then when mid 2012, when we were back from Kandahar, Afghanistan, obviously that's a life-changing experience. So I went through the process of just kind of redefining where things were and figuring out, tried some, a bit of time working in the insurance industry and a bunch of different things. And at some point, I found myself in a very comfortable place working as a federal employee in a property and fiscal office here in Rhode Island. And I thought to myself, I want to do more. I want to do, focus on things I'm more passionate about. Accounting is not it. So I, brought it back to the drawing board, and I thought about, what were the things that have always been in the background that I've been passionate as a kid and throughout life. And that was the law and problem fixing and computers. So I thought, how can I put that together? And that's when I found that at this point, this is mid 2010s, there was a thing as, digital incident response and kind of putting out fires. And there was this whole cyber protection and all these legal components to it. And I became fascinated by the problems. So I said, how do I do that? So I figured it out, landed at Roger Williams University of Law in Rhode Island, where I did a joint degree, earning a Juris Doctor and a master's in cyber. And that's kind of what put me in that path, it's common in law school to do unpaid internships. And after a 5-day unpaid internship, plus National Guard duty, plus full-time course credits during the first summer, I said, next year, I'm going to find a paid internship. And I kept searching. And as I kept searching, I found a small identity management company that had an office in Providence, Rhode Island, and it was headquartered in Arizona, called Cyber Scout, where they used to be called IDT 911, but it recently changed to Cyber Scout. That is, I started there as an intern, and I earned a position in their consulting team where they were selling proactive incident response plans and GDPR compliance and security audits and red team, like penetration testing, all sorts of wonderful things. And I stayed there through the rest of law school and eventually earned a full-time position as a privacy analyst, and eventually kept working in that consulting team and took over the consulting team. And I thought we are really well, we did a lot of work in cyber insurance and we were well positioned. So I thought we should create a digital forensics incident response practice out of this. The perks of being a small, agile company is that you can sometimes just do things, right? And so we were well positioned, and I went to one other guy and I said, do you want to do this? And there was a little bit of a diehard John McClane interaction. There was some IAs sent around, and we said, yeah, let's go do it. So we started a more formal DFIR, or digital forensics incident response shop. And that's still where I am. And that we grew that into a global offering under the Cyber Scout brand. We've began to operate with focus in the cyber insurance realm. And we kept just growing it organically. And then eventually, around March of 2021, Cyber Scout was acquired by Sontiq, who was also in the identity management space. We kept going through, everything that those acquisitions bring. And later that year, we were acquired by TransUnion, and we've been under TU now for 3 years, where we've continued to grow our incident response and breach program to heights that we never imagined almost 10 years ago. So that's how I got here, as far as a career path. It was just a lot of hard work, grind, 2 a.m. calls, dedication, and a little bit of focus, some luck, and just a whole lot of stubbornness and, willingly putting those to the grindstone and just not taking those for answers, and just putting all your talent and your focus into a thing, and just really hammering, and that's the story. That's how I got here.
I love the passionate articulation of your journey. And may I say thank you on behalf of everyone at the Safe House for your service to our country.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been one of my life's pleasures. I'm still in 18 years in now, and, we'll keep that going.
Much appreciated. So, Eder, as a problem solver, obviously, and you're tech savvy problem solver. So for all the early in the career or thinking about joining into this whole fray for our listeners, I think Eder's he's a poster child for how you can evolve with dedication and leverage your talents for problem solving and your passion for technology and your ability to understand technology and apply it. So, question for you, Eder, how do you, since you kind of grew up with it, I mean, you just grew into this role and you helped define incident response. I think it would be I'd argue that case. And so I'm interested to see how you think about incident response. What is incident response? How do you define it? And how do you go about categorizing the areas and the who, what, and whys of how this all unfolds?
That's a great question, Jeff. I think it's, I like to look at it as open and holistically as possible. I see it as a big complex weave that should kind of be a mantle over every organization, because there is no such thing anymore as an organization that has no digital footprint. Mm-hmm. And I can confidently say that because we have done provided our services to bakeries, to plumbers, mom and pop. All right. We we focus in SME here, mm-hmm. That's small, medium enterprise. So for those that haven't heard the term before, so, we work with a lot of micro business, 2-3 people, mm-hmm. really everyday people that we help through cyber incidents. And taking it from a guy who's negotiated ransomware incidents for a bakery before, or for a single practitioner, accountant, or a single practitioner, plumber. There is no business without a digital footprint anymore. And if you have a digital footprint and you're a business, for profit or not, you can be targeted by cyber criminals, which then makes it where incident response is something that you absolutely should consider into pretty much every decision you make for your business. Because since we rely on digital systems, we have to then think about how those digital systems can be leveraged against us, and how they can have negative impacts when things go wrong, instead of being the force multipliers and enabling business enabling tools that they are on every day to us. So when I look at IR and what is IR, I think IR really is just a critical part of doing business in 2024. When I'm thinking about it, I think, if I have a small business, I know it's easy to focus on the services you deliver, but it's also so critical to think, well, as I make this change, as I create this new account, or I get this new app, what are the risks here? How do I prepare to deal with if this thing breaks, or if this thing goes wrong? What impact does that have? Because quite often, not only are folks, especially in the SME space, not thinking about the impacts, they don't have the bandwidth often to really take the time it needs to really get deep into, if this thing no longer works, what does that mean for our business? And so it's very critical that I think people take IR very seriously and start thinking about it holistically, and start thinking, okay, how do I plan? What do I do before an incident? What should I do? What is an IR plan? That's a critical part of the preparation, is creating a plan, essentially a map, a guidebook, a handbook, whatever you want to, kind of think of. It starts there, and then letting that be your guide towards being a more secured entity. And by the way, IR plans in a way should not just apply to business; they should apply to people now too. We're really seeing the growth of personal lines insurance, cyber insurance, being adopted not only globally, not only in the U.S. but all over the world. And everyday people are affected by these sorts of threats as well, right? Imagine if your Instagram account's compromised, or if your Facebook account's compromised, or if your mobile device is compromised. It would be fantastic if people had at least a better idea in general what do I do. And so that starts really with the planning phase. Well, in the business world, we would call the IR plan.
So you talked about, a small bakery, but you also have done big entity plans, incident response type activities. Are the elements the same in a small business versus an enterprise level type of business?
Some are, absolutely. There are always pillars. I find if you take an overall genre of a thing, and incident response is no different. There are certainly pillars that are quite constant. And then, of course, between those pillars, you're going to have a lot of variation that's going to be industry dependent, company size dependent, services, what the company does, right? The digital risk for a bakery versus a CPA are very different, right? One handles with people's most sensitive information, and the other one creates products that they sell, physical, tangible products to clients. It's a very different, type of service. So things are very different, but the bakery has a computer. The bakery has an email account. The bakery may have a server the same way that the CPA does. So it still requires protecting those assets, those digital assets. So so you can benefit, both businesses can benefit from the same by looking at IR through a pillar or basic principles, first principles way of looking at it, in a very similar way. And then as they get into the weeds of it, that's when you're going to see the variations and the changes that come inherently based on the differences between those business. That's why I'm a true believer that every business, especially businesses and really everyone, but that can be maybe overly skeptical, bringing it to the overall public, but for sure, every business should have a written incident response plan to be a guiding book, a guiding light in that moment where you have the moment, right? The oh no, and then you realize you have an incident, because that's when the adrenaline starts pumping. People start getting, well, for lack of better terms, freaking out a bit, right? And sometimes they should. And there's nothing worse than having something bad happen to your business that's outside of your control sometimes, and you have no idea what to do or who to turn to, and it has drastic impact on your business, and that impact can be lasting too. We've seen ransomware incidents shut down small businesses before. We've seen that over and over again, and it's a shame when you see somebody provide a great service to their community for 30 years and then a lack of cyber hygiene or know-how on what they should have done results in, say, a ransomware scenario, which then ends up crippling the business for a while, and it creates enough damage that the business owners have to make a decision to shut it down. And that's an incredibly sad thing to see. But unfortunately, when you operate at the scale that we do, you see it often.
It sounds like, all right, the plan is where we start. Please join us next week as we continue our conversation with Eder in part 2 of Anatomy of Incident Response. That's our podcast for today. I'm Jeff Edwards for the SafeHouse Initiative. Thanks for joining us, and remember, be safe, be resilient, and be kind to each other. For more information about the SafeHouse Initiative, please use your mobile device to scan the QR code on the screen, or send us an email at info@safehouseinitiative.org, or visit us on our website, safehouseinitiative.org. We look forward to hearing from you.